Hello, everyone. Welcome to this amazing event. Roberto Cruz will be speaking about taxes and legal aspects of when investing in Mexico. So for companies wanting to invest in Mexico, this is the time to understand how to do the things well. My name is Gabriela Castro. I'm the Executive Director of Global Chamber Metro Querétaro, and we are glad to have people interested in investing in Mexico, and of course, Roberto Cruz, who will be giving the presentation. But first, I want to introduce to Doug Bronke. He is the president of Global Chamber. He will give us some welcoming remarks.
Hi, Gabriela. Hi, everybody. How are you? Roberto is amazing. I've never heard a conversation about taxes to be amazing before, but if anybody can do it, Roberto can do it. This is an important topic for anybody doing business in Mexico, and we're very fortunate to be having a partner like Roberto, who's so knowledgeable and beyond that, just fun to work with. And sometimes that's really important when you're working with anybody in part of global business. So Gabriela, thank you for pulling this together. I understand that there are several more programs coming. What are the other, I think there's 3 programs, right, coming after this. What are the other programs? What are the topics?
The topics are sales with AI and warm introductions. How to build your international or global network, but not only having one conversation, really to build a relationship with this amazing community that is Global Chamber.
Okay. Looking forward to it. And I think they're on a 2-week basis. So I know we have the next one up on the calendar and maybe the next couple. So, but in the meantime, we're here today and we're going to learn about doing business and particularly these topics on Mexico. So I turn it back to you, Gabriela. Thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I wrote some information about Querétaro. It's a 2-minute. I will be reading 2 minutes. And after I will introduce you to Roberto, who would be the speaker. So Querétaro. Querétaro has a population of approximately 2.3 million inhabitants. It is situated in El Bajío region, which makes the state to have a strategic geographical location, easy access to North, Central, and South America. And it's just a few hours from Mexico City, the region's largest consumer base. Querétaro is known for its young and growing population, providing a steady source of skilled labor for businesses. Querétaro has a robust infrastructure. The presence of industrial parks and special economic zones further supports the growth of manufacturing and trade. The Intercontinental Airport of Querétaro offers international connectivity, facilitating business travel and logistics. Querétaro has a favorable business environment. Stability and security is a crucial factor for businesses looking to invest in a foreign region or businesses wanting to focus on growth and innovation. Several countries have made substantial investment in Querétaro, such as the United States, Canada, Japan, Germany, and Spain, among other nations. Key sectors and industries are aerospace, automotive, advanced manufacturing, IT, and software development, and agribusiness. In conclusion, these factors collectively position Querétaro as a competitive destination for global business and investment within Mexico. Its robust infrastructure, skilled workforce, and favorable business environment have attracted international attention, particularly in the aerospace and automotive sectors. Additionally, its location and connectivity make it an ideal choice for companies looking to expand their presence in the Mexican and North American markets. So as mentioned, Roberto Cruz from Russell Bedford is our speaker today. He's a public accountant, graduated from Tecnológico de Monterrey, Querétaro, He holds a master's degree in taxation from the Autonomous University of Querétaro. He collaborated in international firms such as Deloitte and PricewaterhouseCoopers. In Russell Bedford, he is a partner and chairman of the International Tax Committee. He has accumulated more than 28 years of experience in the area of national and international taxation, consulting, and accounting. Professor at Tecnológico de Monterrey, Querétaro, Mondragón University, and the Autonomous University of Querétaro. He is the secretary of the Tax Committee of Coparmex and chairman and leader of the National and International Tax Committee of Russell Bedford. And of course, he is an active member of the advisory board of Global Chamber. On you, Roberto.
Thank you very much, and proud to be part of this global family. Thank you very much to everyone that could join us today. Thank you. I think you are from all around the country. I think we have someone from London, inclusive. He just wrote to me that he was taking the webinar right here. So thanks to everyone. Thank you, Gabriela. Thanks, Doc. Nice to see you again, and nice to see you, everyone here. Well, so just Gabriela just mentioned.
One thing, please write your questions in the chat. I will be reading them to Roberto at the end. 10 minutes before we wrap up, we will. I will read all the questions to Roberto. Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you, Gabriela, and thank you also for presenting. So, well, the presentation that you're going to see has a lot of technical terminology, but I will try not to go that technical. That's for your information, and we can share it to you if you want to. That will be available. Just write us down your email, or probably on the registration that you just made. We can just send it to you. So that's for you. That's the presentation is for you. That information is very important. And well, I will try not to be so technical, since sometimes I just get excited, and then, you know, all these kind of taxes are very exciting for me. So I will try not to be very, very technical. So what we're going to talk about right now, it's the tax and the legal tips for new entities. Where? Here in Mexico, and particularly probably in Querétaro, but we're going to talk about in Mexico. You know, I think a month ago, when I was here in Querétaro, I had the fortune to be invited to go to a rural school, of a primary school, and I had some kids over there, and they asked me, well, I tell them my story about how did I get my own firm here in Querétaro. And one of the questions that one of the kids from 3rd grade of primary just asked me, hey, Roberto, what do you need to have a company such as you have it? And that made me think about too many things. But the only thing that I can share to him, since it was a 3rd primary elementary boy that was on the school, I just said, be fearless. So you have to be fearless. You have to have no fear about doing something new. You have to be entrepreneurial. You have to innovate. And that's not the only thing. The most important thing that you have to do is to action. So if you think it, if you do it, you just action it, and you can go to that. Okay, so main considerations about doing business here in Mexico. And this is general, not here just in Mexico. I just want you to know that these are general terms, general main considerations, but not for just making a business here in Mexico. I think for making a business all around the world. So you have to define the business idea, derive it from a brainstorm, you know, but you have to define it, and then you can write it down and say, okay, this is my business idea. This is what I want to do. Okay. So then after that, you have to make a business plan, and this business plan has to make marketing, organization, structures, projections. Projections are very important. Last week, I was in a presentation, in a physically presentation with the tourism sector here in Querétaro, and some of them asked me about what do they have to consider for making a new business. And I told them, have you ever, even you know, probably you will have the business idea, but have you ever put numbers on that business idea? Have you ever put some projections? So how do you want to have your revenues? How are going to be your expenses? So that's one of the things that you have to do when you are planning to do a business now. So the other thing is the administration plan. Now there are some things that I think that are, you know, the main things that you have to keep in mind is to do the administration plan. And this becomes with planning, organization, control, and directions. That's the main things. If you can read them, that's the main things about administration. So you have to do that with your business if you want to be successful, okay? So the other thing is the capital, the investors, and the financing. You know, in a manufacturing business, you need more money since you need machinery, you need more things. Even, you know, probably in a service company or in a service business, you probably won't need that money enough. I mean, you need money, however, but not that enough in order to make an investment on machinery. You know, if you are a service company, such as we are a service company, then we will not have to make a huge investment. No, I started in a room in my house providing these kind of services. Now I have a big firm, well, a medium firm that has more or less, we are 55 more or less co-workers here in Querétaro. So the other thing that you have to keep in mind is the organization structures. You know, how are you going to handle this business? Are you going to have partners? Are you going to be by your own? It doesn't matter if you have partners or be by your own, but you have to have policies, you know, procedures, and check the profiles that of the people that you want to work with, or that the people that you want in your company. So another thing that you have to keep in mind also is the human resources, no, such as the recruitment, the training, and the benefits that you're going to be given to your employees. And the main thing that we're going to talk right here in this webinar is about the fiscal, the legal, the financial, and the accounting considerations. And we're going to see them as the ABC. So I'm not going to be that technical. I'm going to give you an overview about what you have to do here in Mexico in order to establish a new company, okay? Go ahead, please, with the next one. Okay, now the ABC for a startup, okay? You have to define the legal entity type that you want to handle here in Mexico. This definition has to be aligned to the legal activities intended to be developed by the company. The most common entities types here in Mexico are the following ones. Is Sociedad Anónima de Capital Variable, that is the SASB. And partners, this has the characteristic of the partners whose obligation is limited to the amount of their reimbursement, okay? And it has just a sole administrator. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind, yeah, to make a company here in Mexico is you have to keep in mind which responsibility do you want that the partners have. So if you go by your own, then the responsibility is for you in a legal and in a tax matter. What I mean here is that if you go by your own, you can do it as an individual. But once, if you have to have some reviews from tax authorities or some legal authorities, then you by your own, you have to be the responsible. Now, if you incorporate a new company, then the responsibility will come to the partner, to the company, not to the partners, and it will be limited to the partners. And that's why I want you to know that this responsibility is different in each kind of companies. So here is the Sociedad Anónima, that is the most common. Sociedad de Responsabilidad Limitada is the most common for foreign investment, since the shares are only transferable in agreement between the partners. And this one for the US company is a transparent company, such as the US LLC that you have in the US. So you can do a check in the box here. Well, for tax purposes, you can make a check in the box from the company here in Mexico and do it over there in the US. What do I mean by doing this? By doing this is that you can bring some benefits or even tax benefits that you have on the Mexican company and share it and combine it with the numbers that you have with the company that you have in the US. So if, let's say, if you have a loss carry forward here in Mexico, then you can probably, well, that has to be a procedure, and then you can probably carry out these laws that you have here in Mexico into the US company. So that's one of the things for this Sociedad de Responsabilidad Limitada, yet some benefit that you can have on the US, okay? And in other countries as well, but we have to check that, okay? The other one is Sociedad Anónima Promotora de Inversión de Capital Variable, and we name it here in Mexico as a SAPI. SAPI is a company that it's just one step before listing on the stock exchange. So you have to follow the rules, but you are not obligated to be registered on the stock exchange market. So it's just to attract investment and to promote investment projects. So that's one of the things that, you know, new generations here in Mexico, and I think all around the world, they're doing now. New generations are trying to do companies to attract investment, and then once they have the investors, it could be domestic investors or foreign investors, and then this kind of company has some benefits in order to, you know, to have some special benefits, tax benefits, and financial benefits if they have the investment and they do projects with this investment. So this is very typical company that now the new generations, such as the millennials, are doing this kind of companies here in Mexico, because they don't have the money enough to make a project. So they, you know, make some things, do the business idea, and then they can have some investment from companies all around the world, okay? So that's the three common companies that we have. So that's what's next? What's next? Once I define the type of company that I want to do, then what do I have to do? Define the name that you want to assign to the company. And here in Mexico, you have to assign, you have to have minimum 3 options. So then once you get to the defined name, you just pull it, submit the application through the Ministry of Economy website here in Mexico. And you know, some of the foreign investors here in Mexico, what they do is that they always ask, is it easy to incorporate a new company in Mexico? And we always say, yes, it's easy to incorporate a new company here in Mexico. But the thing here that it always takes a lot of time, well, not a lot of time, probably the most time that to establish a company here in Mexico that it takes is this, the name that you give to the company, because they have to make a research and then they have to do it. And then personally, I have an experience when I started, I think about 7 years ago, when I started my own firm, I had this kind of issue, since the name that I wanted to give to the company, it was not authorized. And it took me around 1 month to establish the company And that was just because of the name. No other thing, just because of the name. So we have to be very careful about that. And that's what it takes us time to incorporate a new company here in Mexico. If you're a foreign investor, that is the thing. That's the only thing that takes us. You know, it's very simple to establish a company, but this is the only thing that takes us some time, okay? So, well, it says here that expect about 3 business days to get the initial response, and then they will respond, but they will respond if they authorize the name or not authorize the name, okay? Once the name is approved, then you have to submit the application to the public notary to formalize the company registration. That I think that most of the content of the countries has to do this. Okay, then you have to prepare the bylaws that you have to do, that you have to have on the company. And what's the bylaws? The bylaws is the document describing the guidelines that will regulate the basic aspect of the company, the rights of the partners, and the relation with third parties. So this is where you establish the responsibility of the partners. As I mentioned before, I say, okay, if you go by your own, then you're going to be the only responsible. But if you go and establish a new company, then you will have the shield, let's say that, of the company, and that will be the responsibility, the responsible of any issue that the business has. Okay, so here on the bylaws, then you establish all the limitations, all the obligations, all the rights that you have to do with the company and the stockholders or the partners, okay? Identify the partners that will integrate the company. All of them must be registered on and have their taxpayer ID. So, you know, the tax ID that you have in all the countries, here in Mexico, you also have it. That is named the RFC or RFC, okay? That's the tax ID here in Mexico. In case, this is important, because if you have foreign investors, then in case of one of them are foreign, they must hold and present a legal residence document to do business in Mexico. So you have to do that. It doesn't, remember that the resident, and particularly the tax resident, is very different from the resident, the migratory resident. Immigration is very different to the tax resident. So one is the tax resident, one is immigration. So it doesn't have to be connected for that. You have the tax resident is where you pay taxes. So we have, remember that we have some treaties in order to avoid the double taxation. So if you have a business in other country that is not in Mexico, and you have a business here in Mexico, then you can credit the tax that you pay probably here in Mexico, or if you have a tax residence in Mexico, even you are not Mexican, but you have the tax Mexican residence, you have to pay taxes here in Mexico. But if you don't have the tax residence here in Mexico, if you have it in another country, then you will have to pay taxes in that country where you have the tax residence. So the company that paid the taxes, or the business that pays the taxes here in Mexico, there's a special procedures in order to credit the tax that you paid here in Mexico in the other country. When you are not a Mexican tax resident. Okay, so that has to be very clear for you. It's very different, the tax residence, from the immigration status that you have. Okay. Okay. So social stock, the shareholders, you have to establish the shareholder structure, tax and operating address where the company will operate. So you have to have this tax domicile or tax address that you have to establish here for the Mexican business. Another thing that we have to keep in mind is that probably you are not a tax resident here in Mexico, but if you made some activities such as having a warehouse here in Mexico, or having a person that is a representative of the foreign company, but it's here in Mexico, be very careful to avoid a permanent establishment, because you will probably will not have a tax residence here in Mexico, but you will probably have a permanent establishment here in Mexico. And that means that even if you are not a tax resident, then you have to pay taxes here in Mexico, since you have some activities that we have to follow up in the in the treaty of double taxation treaties. I'm sorry about that. So be careful of that, okay? That's one of the points that you have to be careful. Okay, let's go on, please. Okay. So the next one, please. Okay, okay, here we go. Okay, so company purpose. This is, I think, from 2 years to nowadays, this has been very important and relevant thing about the companies here in Mexico. Since I think 2 years ago, the outsourcing has been prohibited here in Mexico. So it's not allowed to have any company of outsourcing here in Mexico. Only you can do this if you don't have it on the purpose of the company. So what's the purpose of the company? Define and limit the activities that the society will perform. Must consider only those activities that will be truly performed. So this is what we have to be very careful about here when we establish a company here in Mexico, since I mentioned that outsourcing is not allowed here in Mexico no more. It was allowed 3, 4, and in the past, years ago, a lot of years ago, it was allowed, but now it is not allowed to have it. But you can have it if you limit your activities of your company and you have a special service of a company that is not on the company's purposes. So that's why you have to be very careful. In prior years, in the past, here in Mexico, what we used to do is that we make a huge company purpose. You know, even if I was, doing airplanes, probably I can say that I also sell food in the nights. Okay, so that's one of the things that we have to be very careful. Now that was one of the things that we did in the past. Now it's not allowed, because if you want to make an outsourcing of any service, then you have to keep in mind that, okay? So management team type. So managed team of the company who will be the legal representative. They must accomplish the activities designated by the partners. Could be one or more people in the team. Surveillance team. So must be someone different from the management team or a partner. It cannot be none of them, okay? The next one, please. Okay, so here's an example of what you have to do here in the Mexican, with the Mexican companies. No, this is an example. The Enterprise and Innovating SADCB. Remember that we already talked about what type of company do I want to establish here in Mexico. So we establish here an SADCB, okay? And the partners are Mexicans, Juan Perez and Maria Lopez. It's as a John in the US and Mary, okay? So company expiration date, it will be indefinite. Social capital will be 50,000 Mexican pesos, and the shareholder structure will be as it is follows. Juan Perez will be 50%, Maria Lopez will be 50%. You have to have the value of the shares of each share, and this is the share fixed capital by the two partners that we have in this example of a company. Okay, the next one, please. So this is an example of what we already talk about, everything that we talk about. Now, tax residence here in the city that I'm local here in Querétaro. So Querétaro and also our global chamber of Querétaro. So tax residence, remember that we already talked about the tax residence. We already talked about the taxes, the tax residence as itself. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so the admission of exclusion of foreigners, this means that you have to establish in the bylaws of the company that you accept or you have admitted foreign investors, okay, foreign partners. Company purposes, this is an example, provide all kind of cleaning and sanitation services, either by its own means or through franchises, patents, trademarks, trade names, options, and preference, copyrights, concessions, and license of third parties, okay? So, as you can see, we just established a very small company purpose, okay? Remember that I told you, in the past, we used to have a very huge purpose. So, once if I will probably do something right now, I will, manufacture cell phones, but in the future, probably I want to manufacture computers, then I can probably put my whole company purpose in a huge way. What we recommend now here in Mexico, since the thing that I told you that outsourcing is not more allowed here in Mexico, is that establish a small purpose. And then if you are going to do something else additional to what you do on your purpose, then you can add it. You just go to notary and you can add the activities, the new activities that you're going to do. But you have to keep in mind that that's one of the suggestions that we made right now here, okay? Management type is sole administration, that will be Maria Lopez. Legal proxies, the legal proxies are specific proxies to a person, okay? It doesn't mean that it's the legal representative. Legal representative here in Mexico is different from this kind of legal proxies that you will assign to some people. In this example, I am Roberto Cruz. It says Roberto Cruz. I have a legal proxies for registration of the company at the Secretary of Finance or the tax authority, that is the SAT here in Mexico, and with also representation to the public registration, okay? So that's one example, okay? Surveillance teams, remember that it could not be one of the partners or one of the management team, okay? So this is a different person, that it's Juana Hernandez, okay? So that's the example, okay? Of what we already seen. The next one, please. So, okay, then what do we have to do? Now, we already determined the type of company that I want to establish. Then I do all the procedure in order to make the registration of the company. That's what we already saw. The bylaws, we did all the things, the corporate legal things that we have to do to establish a company. Now what do we have to do? Register at the public registry of commerce. That's what we have to do. That's the next step, okay? So they will give you a business folio or a business number. It has to be a number, business number or business ID, which will be the number that will identify the company, okay? Then you have to make the registration at the tax authorities' offices, okay? On the website, you can do it. And you have to have electronic signatures. Here in Mexico, there's a special signature that you have to have it in order to make a lot of procedures. Not even just tax procedures. This electronic signature is also available to do another procedures of another things, okay, with another authorities. It's so secure that they are, handling also this electronic signature. opening a bank account. Here in Mexico has been also, this is one of the other things. Remember that I told you that the name was one of the issues that we have here? Well, this is another thing that we have to keep in mind. Opening a bank accounts here in Mexico and dollar bank accounts is very difficult. Now, the banks are asking for a lot of requirements, a lot of things that you have to do in order to have a bank account. So we have the experience of 2 clients that it took 2 months to have their dollar bank accounts, 2 months in order to have that. So that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind. And I probably will put this one on a first step. Do this one. Well, you have to have the tax ID, first of all. You have to have the tax ID in order to request for the opening of the bank accounts. But once you have the tax ID, this is the first thing that you have to do here in Mexico. Open the bank accounts, because it has been very difficult now to open a bank account. And if it's on a foreign currency, it's more difficult. So that's one of the suggestions that I also make you. Do take this into particular importance of doing when you open here a company in Mexico, okay?
No, Madrino, bájate.
Obtain the employer register, okay? So you have to have a registration here on the Social Security, so you can have employees and as an employer, okay? So you have to make this registration. Next one, please. And that will, and then you will have also a Social Security ID. And I think this is also in most of the countries that we have to do this as well, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. Okay, legal employee contract preparation, that's the other thing that we have to keep in mind. You know, make the NDI, the non-competition agreement, notice of personal data privacy that you have to keep in mind that in Mexico, and I think in most countries of the world, you have now to do this of the personal data privacy, okay? Here in Mexico, that I know that you don't have it in another countries, is the profit sharing, that we know this one as the PTU. Profit sharing is one of the things that you have to keep in mind for doing business here in Mexico. What is the profit sharing? In general terms, is 10% of your earnings that you have here from Mexico, of your profit that you have here in Mexico, is the 10% that you have to share with the employees. In general terms, there are some limits, there are some special treatments that you have to follow up in order to determine the profit sharing here in Mexico, but that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind. It's another expense that the company or the business have here in Mexico. And there, I know that not too much countries has these ones, okay? Electronic invoicing. Now, this is one of the things that has, and I name it as our essential element of the Mexican tax system. Now, electronic invoicing has been very, very important here in Mexico for determining the taxes. So all the expenses, all the sales, all the investment has to have an electronic invoice that we name it here in Mexico as the CFDI. Yeah, so that's very important that you have to keep in mind. Here in Mexico, you have this system that it's the electronic invoicing. So now the tax authorities, since they authorize this electronic invoicing, so tax authorities now, they know what you invoice it to your clients, since you have to send the invoice, and then the tax authorities will authorize that invoicing, and then you can share that invoice to your client. So that's the procedure that you have to follow here in Mexico. So it's very important to keep in mind this, okay? So that's why you need the electronic signature. So now we're going to the income tax here in Mexico, okay? What
Roberto,
happens?
you have more 10 more minutes.
Okay, got it. So what do we have to keep in mind now for the income tax here in Mexico? these are some suggestions, okay, that I will recommend it to you if you establish a new company here in Mexico, or you have, let's say, a small or a medium company here in Mexico, okay? So there are two regimens that tax regimens that you have here in Mexico, that it's the simplified regime of trust, that we name it here in Mexico Recico. And the other one is the general regime, okay? Taxes are calculated in annual basis. Here in Mexico, you have to pay taxes in an annual basis, but you have to make prepayments every month. So you have to make some prepayments to make to pay the annual tax that you will have determined at the end of the year. Okay, the next one, please. Okay, so what's this one? The Recico one, the trust regimen that we have here in Mexico. I think, and this is my suggestion, to start with this kind of regime. Okay, it's for individuals that we name it here in Mexico personas físicas. Personas físicas are our individuals, and the company, that it's a legal entity, and we name it here in Mexico as personas morales. Okay, so what is this regime, the Recico regime, that it's the trust regime here in Mexico? Income limit for individuals are 3.5 million pesos, that it's around 2,000 US dollars. And that's for individuals. And for legal entities or companies, the limit is 35 million pesos, that it's more or less 2 million US dollars. So that's the limit. If you go above that limit, then you will not be allowed to pay taxes in this Recico regime that we mentioned, okay? So that's clear. If we go, we have income above this, I will be out of the regime and I cannot pay taxes as this, okay? So another very important thing is for digital platforms business, such as Uber, such as Amazon, such as those platforms, you cannot pay taxes on this kind of regime, okay? So you have to keep that in mind. Next one, please. And you know, this one, the trust regime, I think I suggested, as I mentioned, when you start, okay? You have to, as we mentioned, we have to make a monthly prepaying tax or payment in advance every 17th of each month. For tax calculation will be considered the total document by electronic invoicing. We already mentioned about the electronic invoicing, okay? And effective collected. So it's on a cash flow basis. So this calculation in general terms is on a cash flow basis, and no deduction is allowed. This will probably surprise us, because you say, okay, how come I cannot have any deduction? Because you have a very low rate to pay. So you can see it in the table that you have in the slide over there. The rates for this kind of regime, tax regime, is from 1% to 2.5%. Most of the companies, and we're going to see it in the general regime, that it's going to be 30%. So this is a very, very low rate. That's why I suggest to start with this kind of trust regime to pay the taxes, because it's a very low rate. Okay, the next one, please. This is the monthly table. And the annual table also, you can do, also if you can see that the rates are the same one. So it's a very low rate. So when do you have to pay the taxes? On April, okay? Tax calculation will be considered the total income document of electronic invoices collected. It's also in a cash flow, and no deductions. But what you can, let's say, deduce from this is the returns, the discounts, or the bonifications that you have on the sales, but not the expenses. Just these kind of things is the ones that you can deduct, okay? Recico general information. Okay, holds current, okay, you have to have this electronic signature that we already talked about. issue the electronic invoicing. You have to have also this, I name it as a good tax behavior letter that we have it here in Mexico. This is a letter that is issued by the tax authorities, and it says that you're a good taxpayer. You have paid, you have filed all your tax returns. It doesn't account if you do it, if you determine it well or not. It only counts that you have already filed the tax returns, okay? And be out of the blacklist that we have a blacklist report that it's the bad taxpayers. It's public here in Mexico. We have a blacklist report of bad taxpayers. So you have to be not in that list, okay? Next one, please. Okay, the other one, the general regime that we were talking about. Entities with their own legal personality that we already talked about that. They have their own legal personality, so they are responsible for any issue that the business itself can have, okay? Profits calculations, you pay here dividends. The other ones, if as an individual, you just have the profit that you have and then you take it to your pockets. Now here you have to decrete some dividends, okay? This kind of business is that they have tax losses on the first years. They say that the first 3 years, in general terms, if a business does not give you profits in the fourth year, then it's not a business. So you have to change it. So one of the things that we can have, and we can use these loss carry forward taxes for the future profits that you will have. This is one of the benefits that you have on this general regime, okay? So also you have to issue electronic invoices, and you have to have electronic bookkeeping. Now here in Mexico, that's another obligation that we have, electronic bookkeeping, okay? The next one, please.
2 minutes, Roberto.
Yep, almost done, almost done. Okay, let's do it very fast. Okay, as a company, you have to pay BIT. You have green taxes that are ecologic taxes. You must withhold and pay taxes on behalf of third parties, such as the income tax of the employees or the BIT to the suppliers. The next one, please. So we will go all the way to the example. So this is how you calculate the taxes on the general regime, okay? Total incomes, here you can do deductions, and that's the tax base, but the rate is very different. We have a different rate over there. We have a 1.5 to 2.5 percentage. Here is the 30%, okay? So we will see the example. The next one, please. The comparison between both. Okay, comparison between both regimes, okay? So in both, in the general and the trustee one that we name it the Reciclo, you have the same income. Remember that Reciclo comes on a cash flow basis, okay? But deductions, you have 800 and 800, the base. Now the base is very different. Base is, even you can do, on the general one, you can do deductions. The base will be 200%, okay? But the base on Reciclo will be higher. It will be the 1 million that you have on the income. But this is the difference. The tax rate. The tax rate on the general one is 30%. And it will bring you back to income tax of 60,000. And the other one, the Reciclo that you can see there, it's just 15,000, 50K, okay? So this is an example and a comparison example that what we recommend here to do business, to start a business in Mexico, is to start with this Reciclo regime, okay? If you're going to start in a business here in Mexico. And that will be it. I don't know if you have any questions. You can just go to the next one, please. Next slide. I think there's my contact information. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 questions, Roberto. First one, if you have only 1 employee, would you have to share your 10% profit regarding the PTU?
Yes, if you have just 1 employee in the company, yes, you have to share this. There are some special employees that will not be allowed to have the profit, such as general managers are not allowed to have them. The partners are itself. That's the main ones that they won't have to. They are not allowed to have the profit sharing. But if the employees under that structure, yeah, you have to pay that. There is a limit. There's one limit, and this is very important because sometimes in the past, companies probably have a very huge profit, and then you have to share all the profit. Now there is a limitation. There, in general terms, the limitation of the profit sharing is 3 months of salary or the average of the 3 last years of the profit sharing. The best that it goes to the employee. Okay, so that's the limit. And yes, you have to pay the profit sharing. Okay.
Thank you, Roberto. Another question.
And sorry about that. Let me just add something. Add
Sure.
something important. The first year of the company is not obligated to pay profit sharing, okay, until it has operations. So that's another thing. If you're starting a business here in Mexico, it's not an obligation the first year in general terms, okay?
Thank you, Roberto. Next question. Thanks for this presentation. We'd love to understand how long does it take to form a company for foreigners with a specific industry in food and beverages?
Well, as I mentioned, I think, it's very easy to establish a company here in Mexico. Nevertheless, what we have to keep in mind is those 2 things that I mentioned. Is the name that you're going to give to the business or to the company. That's one of the things that probably will longer time period that to authorize. And the other thing, the bank accounts. But once you have established the company, then the other thing, the bank accounts is to operate. So that's the only things that you have to keep in mind. But it's not that hard to establish a company here in Mexico. It's very easy, believe me.
We don't have any more questions. So you have, I put in the chat the Global Chamber email, and Roberto had in the last slide all his information if you want to contact us. So thank you very much for attending. I think that for people wanting to open a business in Mexico, it has been really, really helpful to have Roberto explaining. And we want to have our wrap-up words from our president, Doug Bronke.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Gabriela. I was just thinking, wow. That was amazing. And I really appreciate, Roberto, all the information that you shared there. That was phenomenal. And you do it all with not just expertise, but with passion. So thank you. Stay involved with Global Chamber, because these kinds of things happen not just in Mexico, but all across the world. And one of the wonderful things about networking and connecting with other people is that the good news is good things happen. The interesting news about it is sometimes you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't exactly plan it all out. You just work on good strategic connecting, and then suddenly, maybe sometimes in places that you didn't expect, good things happen. So Gabriela, thank you for creating some good things at Global Chamber Queretaro, and I turn it back to you for the final words.
Thank you, Doug. And as Doug said, keep close to Global Chamber. We are really a supportive business community. We support each other. And as you said, Roberto is part of the advisory board. He's very active, and that's why he's giving a presentation to share his experience and his expertise with the global community. So keep close to us and continue attending to our amazing events. There are many of them wherever you are. And thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Roberto. for being our speaker. And any questions, you know where to find us.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Roberto. Really great.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Oh, Elizabeth, you're there too. I wasn't sure. Great.
Hello, Doug. All right. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Gracias.
Hasta próximo.
Hasta pronto.
Good.